There's a moment in life when nothing is wrong, and yet something important has already begun to slip. Not loudly, not all at once, just quietly enough that no one thinks to name it. I'm 102. The quiet signs. Independence starts to slip. I wake up before the sun most mornings. Not because I have somewhere to be, but because my body still remembers when mornings mattered. I sit on the edge of the bed and wait a moment before standing. I've learned that rushing is no longer a virtue. The room is quiet in a way it never used to be. No clocks ticking loudly, no voices from another room. Just the soft sound of my own breathing and the floorboards cooling beneath my feet. There was a time when independence meant something loud and obvious. Earning my own money, raising children, making decisions that affected other people. I didn't think much about it back then. Independence was simply the air I moved through. In my younger years, life felt like a long hallway with many open doors. I stepped through them without counting how many were behind me. I married, worked, kept a home running. I was good at small systems lists on the refrigerator routines that held a family together. When people depended on me, I felt steady, useful. That usefulness became part of how I understood myself. The blind spot isn't weakness, it's politeness. It's learning to say whatever's easiest so often that one day no one asks anymore. In middle age, independence took on a different shape. It wasn't about possibility anymore, but about competence. Knowing how to fix things, remembering birthdays, driving without thinking about directions. I noticed other people slowing down, but I assumed that was simply how life sorted itself out. Some people aged well, some didn't. I didn't give much thought to why. The signs didn't arrive with announcements. They came quietly disguised as conveniences. The first one I remember wasn't physical at all. It was the day I realized I had stopped voicing preferences. Someone would ask what I wanted for dinner, and I'd say, whatever's easiest. It sounded polite, sensible. I told myself it was maturity, learning not to make a fuss. But over time, that habit spread. I stopped choosing music, stopped correcting small misunderstandings. Letting decisions slide felt harmless, even generous. I thought independence was about being capable. It wasn't. It was about staying present, even when letting go felt easier. Another sign arrived through objects. I began placing things in the same spots each day, not for tidiness, but so I wouldn't have to search for them. Keys on the table, glasses by the sink, a folded note with a phone number I used to know by heart. These weren't failures, they were adaptations. Still, they marked a quiet shift from trusting myself to needing reminders. What I didn't notice at the time was how easily adaptation can turn into surrender. Independence doesn't disappear all at once, it thins. Like fabric worn soft by years of washing. At first you're grateful for the help. Someone offers to carry a bag, to handle a call, to manage a detail, and you let them because it seems kind, because it saves time, because you're tired. When independence fades, it doesn't leave a mess behind, it leaves efficiency. And that's why no one notices what's missing. The blind spot for me was believing that independence was something others could see clearly and protect for me. I assumed that if it truly began to slip, someone would say so. Someone would notice and speak up. But people are gentle when they're afraid of hurting you. and silence, I've learned, can be a form of agreement. There was a moment, nothing dramatic, when I understood this too late. I was standing in my kitchen looking at a drawer I had reorganized many times before. I couldn't remember why I'd moved things around or what system I'd been using. It wasn't panic that I felt. It was confusion mixed with a strange distance, as if I were looking at someone else's life. I closed the drawer and made tea instead. That was the day I realized independence isn't lost when you can't do things. It begins to slip when you stop insisting on being part of them. I've watched this happen to others. Friends who slowly let their calendars empty because it felt easier than keeping plans. People who stopped arguing for what they preferred because they didn't want to seem difficult. Over time, the world adjusted to their quietness. Decisions were made around them. Schedules were set without them. No one meant harm, but meaning no harm doesn't prevent loss. Society doesn't like to talk about this stage of life. We discuss aging in terms of milestones or medical charts, but not in terms of presence. We don't talk about how easy it is to become invisible without ever leaving the room, how dignity can erode not through cruelty but through efficiency. Looking back, I see how often independence was framed as strength when it is really participation. The willingness to speak, to choose to remain slightly inconvenient. When I was younger, participation came naturally. Later, it required intention. Now my days are smaller. I move more slowly, but I still choose things when I can. I decide what time I wake, what cup I use for tea, whether the window stays open or closed. These choices might seem insignificant, but they anchor me to myself. They remind me that I'm still here, not merely being managed by the day. If there is something I understand now that I didn't before, it's this: independence doesn't announce its departure. It leaves through habits we think are polite, through silences we think are kind. It fades when we assume someone else will notice. In the evening, I sit by the window as the light changes. I don't think about the years ahead. I think about the one I'm in. The chair is familiar. The room is quiet. I notice the warmth of the cup in my hands. That noticing, simple, deliberate, is how I stay present. There is a kind of independence that remains, even when much else has softened. It lives in awareness, in choosing to stay awake to your own life, even as it grows quieter. I hold on to that now, not loudly, just enough to feel myself still standing, even when the world moves gently around me. Independence doesn't end when life becomes smaller. It ends when no one remembers to ask, including yourself,